Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education. It is Thursday, March 18th, 1:34 p.m. Our miscellaneous education bill, as well as school discipline advisory council bill passed, which is great. So if Senators Chittenden and Hooker wouldn't mind just staying, maybe working with Jeannie, she may be contacted, or you may be contacted directly to present those bills in the House committees. And if for some reason you're not comfortable doing so, just give me a heads up. But the House will invite you up, I suspect, sometime next week to present those bills. Any tracking you can do as they make their way through the process that you're willing to do, that would be great. Since when they come back, we'll look to both of you to lead us a little bit around the changes, and then you would be responsible for presenting any amendments that we might make on the floor that the House makes. So as much tracking as you can do is much appreciated. And of course, if you have any questions about that, please let me know. And then if we end up going to conference committees, I don't know how Senator Lyons has made these determinations in the past, but for me, the fact that you were both presented the bills would automatically have you on a committee of conference. And so it would be good for you both to have be as fluid and as fluent as you possibly can be on these issues. So thank you both for that. Today we are returning to a topic that we've talked about in the past. That's our state colleges. We invited the Chancellor in to come in to talk to us, with us, about how things are going and to update us since a vote was taken by the state board with regard to next steps for the state colleges. And before turning it over to her, I also want to mention that we will also be hearing from the Governor's Institute as we are gearing up for summer programs. The Governor's Institute has played a long and important role in the state as it relates to opportunities for Vermonters. They're going to give us a little bit of an overview of where they're at, and then we'll return to H81. With that, Chancellor, thank you so much for being with us. Very much appreciate it. And it looks like Ms. Lavasser as well as Ms. Scott are also both with you today. So welcome back to everybody. And Madam Chancellor, we'll give the floor to you, and we'll let you navigate this with your counterparts as you feel fit and to do. So with that, the floor is yours, and looking forward to the update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Sophie Zadatny. I'm the Chancellor for the Vermont State College System. And with me today, I have Sharon Scott, who's our Chief Financial and Operating Officer, as well as Catherine Lavasser, who is our Director of External and Governmental Affairs. So thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to come back today and provide you with an update. I would add that we were asked to provide some written testimony, and we have submitted that. So just for the record, to be aware that there is some written testimony out there as well in response to some questions that people had. So just a quick recap, the Vermont State College System, we do change the lives of thousands of students each year by opening the door to higher paying jobs and an improved quality of life for the students, their families, and their communities. We're comprised of 4 member institutions: Castleton University, the Community College of Vermont, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Technical College. Our mission begins with "For the benefit of Vermont," and the Vermont State College System is deeply rooted in the communities and regions of the state. We educate more Vermonters annually than all the other institutions of higher education in the state combined, and we employ thousands of Vermonters on our campuses and academic centers. In addition, our campuses and academic centers are also centers for academic excellence, culture, and community. So for over half a century, the Vermont State College System has provided access to high quality post-secondary education to students of all ages across the state. We view ourselves as the extension of the state's public pre-kindergarten through grade 12 education system, and then into the post-secondary years, and we serve over 10,000 Vermonters annually. And as we've previously shared with you, the Board of Trustees has adopted 4 strategic priorities of affordability, accessibility, quality, and relevance of academic programs. And to meet its mission and these strategic priorities, the board has committed to making students our top priority, providing the support services and technologies that students need to ensure their success, delivering collaborative educational programs and services that are responsive to the needs and interests of students and employers throughout the state, operating as a responsive, fully integrated administrative system under strong aligned leadership that actively serves the needs of students and the people of Vermont by promoting efficiency, innovation, and collaboration, and being positioned to deliver on these outcomes on an ongoing, sustainable basis in what we all recognize is to be a severely challenging demographic, economic, and competitive landscape. So achieving these outcomes will require the Vermont State College system and the state to undertake genuinely transformative change with regard to higher education and cultural change internally within the Vermont State College system as we become an integrated, high-performing organization that measures its success in terms of student and state success, coupled with a change in how the Vermont State College system is funded and held accountable to meeting those performance measures by the state. And as mentioned, we've going to turn to the transformation piece. In considering transformation, we've been guided by the state's Select Committee on the Future of Public Higher Education in Vermont, as well as working with the legislature, the governor, and our board of trustees. Even before the Select Committee was created last summer, we had already started working on internal transformation and moving towards more unified system operations. And one of those changes was to implement a system-wide budget. Another was our work towards a common general education core across the system. As we're working to envision the Vermont State Colleges of the future, we've been looking to convert many of the challenges we've confronted, both pandemic-related and financial, into opportunities for transforming the system to better deliver for Vermont and the students that we serve, and doing that looking ahead for decades to come. We're also working hard to hold ourselves accountable, and we've been working with the Board of Trustees to ensure that there are strategic priorities and goals in place to move us forward so we can continue meeting the needs of our students and the state. Additionally, the Select Committee in their upcoming final report is planning on including metrics for us in their final report. And the budget that's coming out of the House is also looking at ways to make sure that we're held accountable to the state and that we're in a position to provide regular updates on our performance, meeting certain metrics and advising on what progress we're making towards those. So we do look forward to reporting back to you and partnering with you as we work together to transform the Vermont State College system into the future. As we've been thinking about change, we've focused on 3 key questions with regard to the changes that are under consideration. The first is, does the change meet the needs of students? The second is, does it meet the needs of the state? And the third is, does it contribute to the Vermont State College system's financial sustainability? And as we've gone through this work, we've developed a number of key pillars. The first pillar is student success as our key focus. And that means that we're committed to delivering on the higher education and continuing education needs of Vermont and Vermonters while preserving the high-touch, personalized approach and close-knit campus communities that the Vermont State College system is known for. And in doing that, we're seeking to better serve students where they are with a learning modality that works for them, on a schedule that works for them, with the courses, programs, credentials, both credit-bearing and non-credit-bearing, that provide them with the skills they need to attain their life goals and doing it at a price that they can afford. The next pillar is education for life. And we're trying to create opportunities for Vermonters at every point in their adult life. So from the early college dual enrollment programs that we have for high school students to credentials of value for working adults and those seeking to upskill and reskill. We do recognize that moving forward, we need to develop even more high quality educational opportunities that meet the needs of students, employers, and the state by expanding the availability of credentials of value, such as associate's degrees and credentials and certificates that will enable our students to secure higher paying employment or advance at work. Additionally, we need to continue our work on creating stackable credentials within our degree programs because that provides maximum value and flexibility to our students. The next pillar is that Vermont is our community. So in addition to serving our students and meeting the workforce needs of Vermont, we are looking to maintain our physical presence in each of our current host communities. We're looking at combining a reduced physical footprint with expanded access to academic programs statewide. And rural public institutions such as ours, we do provide crucial educational and employment opportunities to local residents. We serve as economic, social, and cultural anchors in our host communities, and we do help to educate workers in high-demand local industries, such as healthcare, education, business, mental health counseling, hospitality, and tourism. And the final pillar is consolidation of administrative functions. We do recognize that to achieve fiscal sustainability, we need to reduce administrative costs. And one of the ways we're looking at doing that is part of the transformation is this common accreditation that's been widely reported on. And the goal of the common accreditation, along with other system-wide administrative consolidation, is to enable the Vermont State College system to avoid duplication, increase efficiency, improve compliance, and reduce costs. So the Select Committee has issued 2 reports. The second one came out February 12th. And on February 22nd of 2021, the Vermont State College System Board of Trustees adopted the key recommendations that were in that Select Committee report. And that included an overall organizational structure for 2 complementary institutions with significant system-wide administrative consolidation. And this means that we're looking to unify Northern Vermont University, Vermont Technical College, and Castleton University under a single accreditation and single leadership structure, while maintaining the Community College of Vermont as a separate institution. And again, also looking at further administrative consolidations. The goal is to have the single accredited institution by the fall of 2023. We're doing this to better serve our students and meet our mission, but we also want to be clear that we are committed to maintaining our current physical locations across the state. The goal is to unify in a way that our students and our host communities feel minimal impact, while also transforming us into the higher education institution the state of Vermont is asking us to be. So work on the appropriate academic program array for a combined Castleton University, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Technical College is already underway, and that's grown out of the work that was undertaken by both Castleton and NVU in the fall to address duplicate programs. So that came out of we had a VSCS Forward Task Force last summer, and one of the recommendations of that group was that we look at eliminating duplicate programs. So we're also working on creating a single general education core, which is also part of one of the recommendations that came out of the work last summer. Another thing we're doing is working on looking to expand the successful Harkness Library model that CCV and Vermont Tech currently have, and we're looking to create a system-wide virtual library. So we do recognize moving forward that we need to focus on the needs of Vermont and Vermont students for increased sub-baccalaureate degrees and non-degree programs, certificates and credentials. And to that end, we're looking to create a director of workforce development to serve as a single point of contact system-wide for workforce development and continuing education programming. And accordingly, we're going to be developing a business plan and redesign business processes in this coming academic year, with the hope of launching that by July of 2022. Turning to the administrative consolidations, it is well recognized that the Vermont State College system needs to function as a consolidated system rather than as a confederation of institutions. And we need to do that in order to realize the benefits of scale and to overcome the habits of history. Consolidating and modernizing administrative services adds value through cost reductions, improved service for students and employees, and workable solutions to common problems. And the consolidation and modernization of administrative services also includes developing and enforcing a standardized set of policies and procedures for services system-wide, with delivery of services both in person and virtually. And to be clear, although functions may be centralized, This does not mean physical centralization in the Chancellor's office. Instead, functions may well be centralized on individual campuses where there's particular expertise or where such expertise in a particular area can be created. So several of the areas that will be consolidated or have improved consolidation include procurement, financial aid, registration, admissions, marketing, information technology, and human resources. To be successful, transformation will require strong vision and leadership, disciplined project management, establishment of relevant success metrics, exceptional change management, and collaboration among all our stakeholders. And the slide that you now have in front of you is an illustration of what we're talking about here in terms of having two separate institutions and then significant overlap, as you can see in the middle, as we look towards system-wide administrative consolidations. So as far as project planning goes, although the breadth of the transformation that we're proposing is revolutionary, we can build on the experience that we've already had through unifying Johnson and Linden. The leadership, faculty, and staff of NVU have demonstrated, for example, that a new brand and vision for education in rural communities can be developed while at the same time honoring the proud traditions and identities of individual institutions and programs. In addition, our faculty and staff have risen successfully to meet the challenges that were created by the pandemic. They've been delivering education in new ways, grounded in robust learning outcomes, collaborating and designing a single education curriculum, and doing all of that with a demonstrated commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So transformation is an enormous undertaking that will require substantial time and money. If supported by additional funding from the legislature, the transformation will position the Vermont State College system to evolve and adjust to the disruptive forces confronting higher education nationally so that we can become financially sustainable. We can provide greater access to education to an increasingly diverse range of students at an affordable price. We can continue to be economic engines in the rural parts of the state, and we can serve as social, economic, and cultural anchors in our host communities, as well as playing a critical role in meeting Vermont's future workforce needs. So preliminary work to map out the work ahead of us is shown on this slide. I know it's a pretty intense slide, but it maps out the different areas and sort of timelines for those. It includes academic, administrative, facilities, technology, and financial planning to ensure that our transformation is successful. And I do want to be clear that although this is a pretty detailed look, we will continue to be evolving these plans as we move forward. They're not set in stone. I mean, we understand that as soon as you undertake a project, you're going to be adjusting things, but it was important to sit down and figure out how we could do this and then the order of sequencing for different projects. But it's, as you can see from the slide, it is going to be an enormous amount of work. The Board of Trustees is responsible for acting in the best interests of the system, and it has a fiduciary responsibility to protect the public assets of the Vermont State College system, including its finances, as well as its reputation and role in the community. As such, it is responsible for approving major decisions, for reviewing transformation progress and checking that benchmarks are being met. So this particular slide shows the board's key decision points moving forward over the next 5 years in connection with transformation. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon Scott to discuss the funding.
Thank you.
Chancellor, sorry to interrupt. Did you email us that? I'm just trying to find that on our website.
I don't believe we emailed that. We certainly can provide it to you.
I wouldn't mind.
More than happy to do that, yes.
Thanks so much. Okay.
So with respect to funding, the Select Committee has proposed, and the Vermont State Colleges is working to obtain the funding necessary from the state to address our structural deficit and COVID-related expenses, the cost of transformation, and a permanent increase in base funding to enable the Vermont State Colleges to operate in a financially responsible and sustainable way into the future. For fiscal year 2022, the Vermont State Colleges is seeking $66 million. This includes the historic base appropriation of $30.5 million, an increase in base funding of $17.5 million, funding to address the structural deficit of $25 million, and an additional $8 million in transformation expenses. As you can see from this slide, the Vermont State College's actual need is $81 million, but through the generous investments to the Vermont State Colleges by the legislature via the BAA, the federal HERF dollars coming into Vermont, and the internal austerity measures we are already undertaking, we've been able to reduce our request to $66 million. As an aside, in addition to the Vermont State College's budget request, when the budget comes over from the House, you may also see an additional one-time $20.5 million critical occupations scholarship package to support our students over the next few years. This package proposal includes internship incentives, scholarships, and workforce training proposals. We'd be happy to share additional details with you on this proposal today or at another time, understanding that our goal today is to focus on the transformation update.
So in closing, we know we've got a significant amount of work ahead of us, and we're not taking the responsibility that we have to our students, the state, our employees, our host communities, our stakeholder groups lightly. We're carefully planning our transformation now, and we look forward to your feedback and partnership on this in the months and years to come. We do recognize that in order to be successful, transformation is going to hinge on a number of things, and that includes ongoing support from the state, the approval of our accrediting agencies and the U.S. Department of Education, that the pandemic is brought under control and we can get back to some form of normalcy, and that we are able to achieve the $5 million in cost savings and or additional increases into revenue each year. So again, we do want to thank you for inviting us in today to share an update with you of what we're doing with transformation. And we look forward to working with you moving forward. So thank you very much. And we look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions, or even if senators, in reviewing the other testimony, the response to questions that was submitted, if anybody wants to highlight anything at this point or raise questions or concerns. Senator Perslow.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question, and maybe this is in the written stuff, I haven't had a chance to look at it, is you had mentioned the performance measures, and you had mentioned something about either the House listed some, or I just wondered what performance measures either have been identified or you're thinking we would use to identify successful transition.
Yeah, so our board, when we went through our strategic priorities exercise with our board in the fall, we came up with, they were very broad, and obviously you can't achieve all those things right away. So we had identified a strategic focus on certain aspects of the priorities, and then we had come up with metrics that the colleges agreed to in connection to those. And again, they were around affordability, accessibility, quality of programs, and relevance of programs. So in addition to that, the Select Committee has also been looking at, for their final report, what kinds of things can they put in there to sort of help keep us accountable as we move forward, to make sure that we're hitting, and particularly, hitting milestones towards the transformation. And then I haven't seen the final version, but I do know that the House Appropriations Committee had drafted some language around what they're calling, I think, requirements, but things to put into with the budget bill to make sure that we're held accountable. And so, some of the things, for example, like the $5 million that we achieve $5 million in savings or increased revenue each year. And then most recently, I think in response to other questions from other committee members in a House Appropriations, some additional very concrete ones were added in terms of, I'm trying to remember, demographics, enrollment, sizes of courses being taught. There were some very, very specific ones in there as well. And again, I haven't seen the final version, but it had a pretty detailed set of requirements for us. And I think part of the goal was also to make sure that we came back to report next legislative session to the education committees, the appropriations committees, commerce, but we come back and report on all the things that we're doing. And that's, right.
Okay, so they have those requirements, and then the select committee maybe is taking your 5 or 4 pillars and then putting some specific metrics on how that would be measured ongoing, like something like student success. unless you have the metric, it's hard to tell.
Right. So I mean, I think that's really important. And one of the pieces that we recognize is in order to pull this off, we really need to have really high quality project management. And you've got to be able to measure to demonstrate that something's working. If it's not working, if strategy is not working, then you need to figure that out. And is there another strategy that might work better? So we recognize that we need both baseline data and we need to be in a position to measure ourselves to see where we're making progress, or is there some other obstacle that we hadn't appreciated before that we now need to address as we move forward? So we really are looking for a much more data-driven approach as we move forward on this.
So will that be done by the board, or like the select committee will do recommendations and you might vote to implement those metrics or to use those metrics to do that measurement of success?
Yeah, I would envision it to come from our board. So again, they've already agreed and accepted a set of metrics as we work on our current strategic priorities. We will have, I'm assuming, again, I know still relatively early, I guess, in the budget process, but I assume at the final end, there will be, in whatever the final budget is, there will be things there that will be required to follow through on. And I'm quite sure the board has been very responsive to the work of the select committee to date. So I fully expect that they will continue to look at what the select committee recommends.
In fact, at our most recent Education, Personnel, and Student Life Committee meeting with our Board of Trustees, we presented our first round of student dashboards, which really gave some really critical baseline information to our Board of Trustees that can be used as an initial baseline to be able to measure ourselves against. The first step is always trying to figure out where exactly are you so that you understand where it is that you need to go. Part of those benchmarks, for example, we're measuring us against peer institutions, meaning rural, small institutions that are comparable to ourselves. The good news, in many ways, our performance is slightly better in many ways. However, it's still a difficult situation that we're in right now because we need to be able to be more than we are today. Being slightly better than our peers isn't going to cut it. We need to be a lot better than our peers. And so I think part of it is trying to figure out exactly where we are, and in conjunction with the select committee, with the work that we expect will come, we welcome requirements coming out of the legislature. It is important to us that we give as much back to you so that you understand how we're progressing as you get from us. So,
thank you.
Senator Hooker, I'm going to give the floor to you, if you don't mind, to manage questions. I have to step out and return a quick phone call.
Okay, thank you, Senator Campion. And I'll ask a question as long as I have the floor. Thank you for being here, and thank you for submitting answers to the questions that we had prior to this meeting to give us a chance to look at them. So I do have a few questions. First of all, one of the problems that we're hearing about with the merging is the branding of each institution. And I'm curious to know, we've already seen the coming together of Johnson and Linden into Northern Vermont University, and I'm wondering, what was the cost of that merger, and did it accomplish the goals that were intended?
Yeah, I mean, and I would say yes, we certainly were able to realize a significant amount of cost savings from that. And again, I think our experience with Northern Vermont University illustrates that we do know what the challenges are when we do this and we bring colleges together, and we do know how strongly people feel about their individual campuses and their history and their traditions. Sharon was at Northern Vermont University, which was at Johnson State College for many years, and then at Northern Vermont University, and was there in an integral part of the unification piece. So I will let her respond too, because she can give you some more color, I think, than I can.
Absolutely. So I can speak really clearly to the visceral response that happens when someone says you're going to merge with a sister institution who has always been your competitor. It is all of what we are hearing from our constituents today are the same things that I heard then and that I felt. I'd been a longtime employee of one institution and was suddenly going to be working with two of our institutions as a combined entity. And so we had the ability to be able to meet the vast majority of the objectives that were placed before us. You asked about the cost. The legislature set aside $2 million through a special appropriation as part of the Budget Adjustment Act for us to be able to fund the merger activities related to creating Northern Vermont University. And those funds were spent in a wide variety of ways, everything from signage and changing the name on the sides of buildings and on the sides of vehicles, roadside signs, but also to address the actual brand as it's created, the underlying website, the marketing materials, and some initial advertising that went along with it. So it was a soup to nuts activity. It was not nearly as complex as what we're talking about here in terms of the transformation of the Vermont State Colleges. In that situation, we were just merging two institutions, not bringing together three disparate institutions, addressing administrative consolidations, and also simultaneously trying to make sure that we remove $25 million from our budget or increase the revenues on an ongoing basis. But it was an opportunity for us to make sure that we, throughout the process, continued to honor both institutions, maintaining local mascots and traditions. So there are traditions on both campuses that continue to this very day. The ringing of the bell, which is done at the opening of a school every year on our Johnson campus, continues to happen. There is a dip in very cold water in the pond at Linden that continues to happen. And so there are many traditions that continue to remain that we would anticipate will continue no matter what we do. Those traditions are part of the fabric of what makes a community a community. And so as we move forward, we will want to make sure that we understand what those are. And by working with the people who are current students, alumni, faculty, staff, and community members to make sure that we honor where we can. So it was a big process, but I think we were able to achieve our goals.
And I think that it'll continue to be a big process, and I appreciate the idea of the traditions remaining. I guess the question is the naming, and that is, one of the serious concerns certainly that we have in this section of the state. And if I can go on to just one more question before I pass it over to my colleagues. With regard to the finances of each institution, are we going to know what each institution, the finances of each institution, where the successes are, maybe where the failures are? Will we be able to parse that out amongst the pieces of the state college system?
Yeah, so
once the merger is complete,
I was going to say right now we're moving towards a system-wide budget. So last year the board decided we should move to a system-wide budget. We are one, just to be clear, we're one financial entity, we're one corporate entity. So all our finances are reported on a system-wide basis. Right now we do have the ability to each individual college and the presidents manage their budgets to a certain extent. But again, system-wide budgeting is really going to rethink the way we do things. So when we move forward, once we have a common accreditation, we won't be looking at separate statements for, the Randolph Vermont Tech campus or the Castleton campus or the Johnson campus. It will all be part of one institution. And that was really one of the reasons why the Select Committee recommended that we move in this direction. So, for example, they pointed out that there's a lot of data in the report, but one of the things that's in the report, for example, is that Vermont Technical College, the cost to deliver its programs is higher than it is for comparator institutions across the country. NVU does pretty well. So NVU, I think, is like 8% more, but Vermont Tech is above. Castleton is also very expensive. And so one of the things the select committee was thinking about with this is, so for example, Vermont Tech provides critical programs to the state. They're very expensive programs, right? They're much more expensive to man a paramedicine program or whatever versus a history class. So one of the things that's happened over the way we're currently structured is we're asking Vermont Tech to really carry those very, very expensive programs alone. And so one of the reasons for combining together is to help to address some of the financial challenges in a way where we're doing it across the whole system. So, I think this is moving forward. It's not going to be a question of, well, how is Randolph doing or how is Castleton doing? We're going to be looking as a whole. And again, I think back to the comments I was saying earlier is rural public institutions require a lot of assistance. You cannot do that depending just on tuition from students, particularly the students we serve. We're open access. We're serving a lot of first generation Pell eligible students. So the students we have do not come from backgrounds where they can pay high tuition. So it really requires an investment from the state in order for us to be able to fund, and provide high quality programming across the state in all these different areas. So it's, I know kind of where that sentiment is coming from. There's a sense of, one campus is doing much better than other campuses. One, I think some of that data is not necessarily accurate, but two, that's not really the way to look at this moving forward. The goal is going to be, is this new entity providing high quality programs across the state that are accessible to students across the state, rather than taking a campus by campus look. And again, we've been very clear, and I think the select committee has been clear. I know our board has been clear. We may be really looking at the campuses may look quite different. Not all the campuses may necessarily look exactly the way they do today. So we're going to have to think, we've got to achieve a significant amount of cost savings here as we move forward. So we are going to have to really innovate and think differently about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So it doesn't mean that every campus is going to do everything. Every campus is going to look exactly the way it is now. But we do believe it's really important to maintain that physical location to provide access to place-bound students in the communities where they are. Looking forward, Sharon's the financial person here, but I don't believe we'll be in a position to say, oh, look, this campus is not doing as well as this campus, because it won't be divided that way financially.
So while we may not be able to do that because that isn't, as a single institution, that won't be something that's available to us, what we may be able to do is to provide information regarding the amount it costs or the profitability of specific programs. Mm-hmm. Because part of what we're doing is educating in programs that can be very costly to do so, but they're extremely necessary to the state of Vermont. It's also part of the affordability equation. So if we want to make sure, for example, that we are educating people in certain engineering or paramedicine type of programs, then we may have to be able to come to you and say, this is what it's costing to run this program, the number of students that we can have. Even saying nursing, for example, you can only have so many nursing students in a class, unlike a history class, where you could maybe have 30 students in the course. A nursing class doesn't allow you to do so. But we can perhaps provide you with some of that level of specificity. And as we start to look at the strategic financial planning of the Vermont State Colleges, those are the decisions that we really need to be able to look at and say, what does it cost to run certain things, certain programs? What kind of revenue are they generating? And is that program something that we need to continue to offer because it's of vital importance to the state? And because it's of such vital importance, we need to offer greater funding to that. That could be a location, it could be a program, but most likely it's a program.
Okay. Thank you. And Senator Campion, I'll let you take over. I kind of monopolized that time that you were gone. But
I believe it's Senator Terenzini and then Senator Lyons.
Thank you, Senator Campion. And Sophie and Sharon, nice to see you. I'll echo some of Senator Hooker's comments. You're blessed with 2/3 of the Rutland County Senate delegation here in education. So it might not be a blessing after I'm done, but look, there's a lot that I could say. And I'll just get to the point. I won't sugarcoat it, but there's a lot in the county delegation that are really concerned that Castleton is going to get the short end of the deal here. And there's local municipalities are concerned, businesses are concerned about the Castleton brand. I apologize about the hammering. We have some work getting done here, but the brand of Castleton that has been built over the last decade with Spartan Arena and the new football stadium and the new dormitories and the programs added, changing it in 2015 to Castleton, from Castleton State College to Castleton University. That was a brand transformation that has made Castleton as a educational institution and this region, it's really put it on the map in our opinion. And first of all, to change the name to whatever it's going to be, Vermont State Colleges at Castleton, really could hurt the image of this university. We think that more students attend or are attracted to Castleton with that university name at the end of it. And so, we would really, or I and others in the delegation that I've spoke to would really like to see the name Castleton University be at the front and then say Castleton University, a Vermont State institution, or have a tagline at the end. But keeping that unique and special identification is critical, because we don't want to lose momentum and we don't want to hurt not only the college, but the economy in the Rutland region. My second point is, going to a single corporation entity or combining all the financials, I say with all due respect, could lead to the lack of transparency. It's really important for taxpayers and the legislature and students to know, is this institution a pull or a drag on the financial integrity of the entire program? In other words, is Castleton funding NVU or vice versa? Is Vermont Tech causing the system to go belly up? These are questions that I think people have. And by combining the finances and not making it more transparent, but some would say making it less transparent, it's not a good place to be. I think we all admit that we have a problem here, but each individual institution should have its own P&L statements, and we should be able to look at the soup and nuts of it and say, hey, listen, this school is profitable or it's not. And some would argue that colleges shouldn't run like businesses, but I would say if we had ran the state college system more like a business over the last so many years, we wouldn't be in the position we are today. I think we have to have more of a business mind and look at those P&Ls and really determine, is this school a winner or loser at the end of the day financially to the taxpayers of Vermont? So.
All right. Do you want me to respond on that?
Please.
I wasn't sure if it was just okay. Yeah. So, as far as transparency goes, all our finances are incredibly transparent. We went through, the state treasurer did a full analysis of us last summer. All our materials are publicly available on our website. There's no lack of transparency about the state of our colleges. My mission as Chancellor of the Vermont State Colleges is to see it survive, and that includes Castleton. This is a way for Castleton to survive, to be honest. If we don't include Castleton in this, it is difficult for me to see how the Vermont State College system can survive unless the legislature is willing to support us at a much higher rate moving forward. One of the benefits, being in a system has pluses and minuses. So one of the pluses has been that over time, over the past 2 decades, there have been highs and lows for different colleges. So at times, different institutions could have gone under and didn't go under because they were able to benefit from being part of a system and receiving a system-wide loan. The downside is that if you have, and this was the challenge with the proposal that was made last spring by the former chancellor, is if you close an institution, the cost of that institution then are borne by the remaining institutions. So, for example, if you shut down one entity, the retiree health costs, the carrying costs, the debt that belongs to that institution then gets pushed back out onto the remaining institutions. And I think what the real situation that we were in was, if that occurs, that was going to bring down all the remaining other institutions within the system. So I think at this point, it's a question of It's not winners and losers within the system. I know there's a perception out there that Castleton is somehow better than, stronger than other institutions in the system. Unfortunately, that is not accurate. Castleton has no strategic reserves, has a debt, a loan that it owes to the system. It has the greatest amount of debt. So it has tremendous strengths. We certainly want to see Castleton survive. We certainly want to continue the experience and the passion that people feel for Castleton. We want them to have that opportunity. We want students to continue to come to Castleton. So we're not looking here at picking winners and losers around the system. The reality is that the colleges fill different niches, and there are other institutions within the system that are serving Vermont. They're serving students where they need to be served. They have programs that are important to the state of Vermont. I get the name. I totally understand that. The challenge is that as far as our accreditors go, the New England Commission on Higher Education, the Department of Education, we have one name. Once you're accredited as a single accreditation, you have one name. So there is nothing to prevent us from preserving the best of Castleton or from continuing to market Castleton as a place to come to and the experiences you can have at Castleton, the football team at Castleton, etc. But the overall name will have to be reflective of whatever the new combined entity is. So theoretically, it could be Castleton University, and then, Vermont Tech is part of Castleton University, and Northern Vermont University is part of Castleton University. I suspect that the folks at those communities would feel pretty strongly about that. But again, we haven't made any decisions on names. There will be an opportunity for input. The board will ultimately make the decision on the name. But I believe there are ways we can address the concerns that the Castleton community and the Rutland community have. These aren't unique concerns. I mean, people obviously feel very passionate about their institution, where they work, where they went to school, the memories and things that they have. So really, this proposal is a way to make sure that we can continue to serve students around the state. We can preserve the education that we have, and that we really are serving the state, because a lot of the programs that we provide are programs that otherwise aren't provided across the state, and they're vitally important to the workforce of the state. So I do, I've been inundated with feedback from people in the Rutland area. I know this is a very emotional issue, but I really strongly believe that we've got to survive, and the way we survive is by working together, moving forward. That trying to pull apart is not going to be ultimately successful for us, for the Vermont State College system or for the state.
You have a follow-up, Senator Terenzini?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Campion, and thanks, Sophie, for your response. I would say that, our concern, many of our concern in Rutland County with the name is not of days gone by or feelings of nostalgia. It is that there has been a powerful brand built around the Castleton University name, and by changing it, it's going to be extremely detrimental, in our opinion, to not only the attractiveness of the school in the short term, but of our economic engine here in Rutland County. So that's it. One last question, and then I'll let others ask. Have you heard from a number of alumni who pledged to the school or give financially, and who have said that they no longer would contribute to the university if it was called anything but Castleton?
I have not, but I do believe that Castleton has received some of those calls. And again, that's not particularly unusual for that to happen when you go through these kinds of mergers.
However, I can say that with the merger of Northern Vermont University with Linden and Johnson, while there was a tremendous outcry of those who said that they would not donate, actual donations went up in the year following the announcement, and they have continued to climb, with the university receiving the single largest gift of the Vermont State Colleges in this last 6 months. So while that is a possibility, often what you find with a merger situation is that because there is greater attention placed on stewarding your donors and having reasons to be in contact with them, that you can actually increase your donations.
Senator Lyons.
So a number of my questions have been asked, but I'm going to ask them maybe a different way. So one of the things, it's all about the branding, of course. That's what everyone's talking about. What are we going to name this organization going forward? That's really so critical and important. And I agree with everything that you all have said, every one of you. But when we think of a CCV student, we can characterize why a CCV student attends CCV, and so that's become extremely clear about folks' needs and their short-term and their long-term goals, their need to enter a higher education slowly and working full-time, raising a family. So we understand that sort of the non-traditional educational process. When I think of a Castleton University student, I don't know. I have kind of a thought about who those students are, but have you characterized why they come to Castleton? And then have you characterized what is drawing students to NVU, Linden and Johnson? So is there a picture of those students? And then I'm going to finish asking this question, but I will have others. And then have you looked at the folks who are in those communities and around who have gravitated toward CCV? I'm leaving VTC out of it for right now, because I'll come back to that. But have you characterized those students who might have gone to a larger, longer, more intense program? Had you been able to characterize what their needs are in the NVU area? So I'm thinking more about the student and who the student is and what then attracts them into a specific environment.
Yeah, so I think as Sharon had mentioned, our education personnel student life committee has really focused on seeking dashboard metrics in terms of who our students are and who we serve. And I think you're absolutely right. We need to know who we serve, because we need to figure out how we can continue to serve them and make sure we're meeting the needs of all the students, including students that perhaps we don't even have yet, that we can determine that we need to reach out to and do a better job of reaching out to in the future. Castleton is certainly the more traditional 18 to 24-year-old age group. Again, we have all this stuff broken out, the profiles of students by institution. So certainly, I think as we think ahead, one of the things we really need to focus on is how do we explain, how do we present, how do we market the whole variety of different experiences you can have at the Vermont State College system? I mean, I think we have to focus on that. How do we serve the needs both of an out-of-state student who may want to go to a Castleton University, the athletics and the community, the campus life that you have at a Castleton, versus someone that wants a really hands-on experiential learning at Vermont Technical College, versus the experiences that students treasure that they have at Johnson and Linden. And I think part of this is going to be the work that we do moving forward. And certainly, as you look at the timeline that we put out there, we're realizing that in order to do the transformation, we have to do it sequentially. So we've got to figure out what programs will we be offering and where will we be offering them. Then we have to figure out the marketing. How are we going to market these programs? How are we going to market the new entity that's created? And then think about the admissions. But I think we need to think much more expansively about who our students are. And they're not just the 18 to 24-year-olds. They are also going to be, high school students that are looking for early college experiences. They're also going to be people that have some college credits and never finished up. They're going to be people that want to change careers, or they want to go in a different direction, or they need to upskill or reskill at work. So we're going to have a significant challenge ahead of us in terms of how do we reach out and market to all those different populations as we move forward.
So in thinking about that so from the curricular point of view, then in order to make that attraction possible and to reach students that might be more non-traditional, have you considered, like individualized learning programs that include some technology or internal networking between and among your individual campuses that would allow for folks who are working with kids? I just think that I hope I'm just I really would hope that there's some creativity going on, because otherwise it will be just another college campus. And there's an opportunity here to have new structures. When we're talking about sort of amortizing the physical plant costs and the costs across all the campuses. That's one thing that's great, as long as you're not sacrificing the more costly programs such as the sciences or nursing or some of those that are so critical. And then I won't comment further. I could go. This is a great conversation. This would be fun to carry on with you, and I enjoy it. But when I think of Johnson, I think of an arts center. When I think of Linden, I think of meteorology. So there are some things that we all can be very proud of in our state, and VTC, of course. But it is expensive, and maybe there's some rationale for fine tuning what's at that campus as compared with others. So I won't.
So, I mean, to be clear, we really are thinking about really trying to reimagine how we do things. And we do have faculty that have really stepped up and are very creative and thoughtful. And so we already have faculty that are co-teaching between Northern Vermont University and Castleton this semester, with more coming next semester. So someone can be teaching in a classroom on the Castleton campus. We have an archaeology professor, Matt Mariority, that's doing that right now. He's teaching in a classroom with students physically there, and then he has students appearing via telepresence from the Johnson campus. So they've got a bigger class. They've got, more diversity in the class. They've got different opinions. It's working very well. We have another professor. We have a math professor at NVU Johnson, who has been teaching high-level math courses. I don't know quite how he does it, but he teaches in person, synchronously, which means there are students participating remotely at the same time the class is being held. And he's teaching asynchronously. So one class, he's teaching 3 different ways. Instead of, he normally would have 8 students in the class, he has over 20 students, because he's able to attract students that, again, might be working parents. They might be folks that want to be able to do it at the weekend, in the evenings, on their own time. But he's also able to teach it in person to the students that are there on the campus, and those that are remotely, maybe, students down at Castleton or whatever. So we really have to be, and that's going to be part of, we're also requesting funding to really help us on the technology end to make sure that all of this happens. But that would be the goal, that this is really about expanding opportunities for students, making programs more available across the system, so they're not isolated on individual campuses, and they're trying to be creative with it. And again, I know, many people will say, online doesn't work, or online students don't like online. The experience that we've seen is that online done well can be incredibly effective. So again, you need to make sure that you're providing the professional development and assistant on course design to faculty to make sure that they're able to provide the best quality programs that they can provide. But we certainly see, for example, with CCV, whose students are probably the ones that you would think would need the most in-person assistance, and yet CCV has very successfully transferred to being 100% online this past year. They already were at a place pre-pandemic where 50% of their courses were being taught online by choice, student choice. Students were signing up for the online courses and filling them in. And so again, we've been able to see flex courses, flexible start dates, accelerated courses, doing courses on your own schedule. I mean, there's just so many interesting and exciting things that are happening. And again, it's all about trying to meet the students where they are, giving them the programs they're looking for at a cost that they can afford, but also in a delivery method that works for them. And for some of them, it will be in person on campus and having a traditional residential experience. For others, it may well be, you know, a working mom with little kids. It may well be that she's doing it at 8 o'clock at night or at the weekends, and being able to be flexible and provide the courses that people are looking for in a way that they can access. So I do think there's just tremendous potential here to really reimagine what we can do with the Vermont State College system.
I see, Senator.
Thank you. I just have one last thing, just to say that the term you use, flexibility, is absolutely key, and it's so key for faculty and administration. But being open to individual needs, and I include in that administrators and faculty and students alike. Otherwise, you end up with some disruption, some concerns. Now, finally, this one last comment. All these things are so great that you're talking about, but CCV is a brand. Everything you've said about CCV, we all know, and the students know it, and prospective students know it. So how can that new opportunity at NVU, whatever the name is, characterize the new institution? I'll end there. You don't have to answer the question.
Thank you. Senator Chin, do you want to close for us?
Really quick, because I know we have a full agenda, and I just want to recognize Senator Terenzini's concern. And UVM, I bleed green and gold, and UVM's official name is the University of Vermont, not U of V. And it's actually, if you look at our charter, it's the University of Vermont and State Agricultural University, but you never hear that other part. So I just know that when we put some smart marketing people in the rooms, I'm sure you're gonna be able to maintain that Castleton University feel and that campus. And I look over to New York, where they have SUNY Plattsburgh, SUNY Albany. I'm not saying we want to be VSU, Castleton, and so on, but I'm sure that given the energy around, keep maintaining that history, it can be accomplished. And I have heard the same from many constituents. They don't want to lose that Castleton route, those Castleton roots, and I encourage the VSU to continue to pursue that. Thanks.
Yeah, we've heard it down here certainly as well. Any final questions or comments before we take just a 5-minute break and move on to the Governor's Institute? Thank you
very much. We always
Thank
appreciate coming and talking to you. So
we'll have you back, I'm sure, again soon. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Senate Education. It's Thursday, March 18th at 2:50. We have a representative, I believe. Elizabeth, are you the director of the Governor's Institute?
Yes, the executive director.
Executive director with us. We know that the Governor's Institute has a long, very strong history in the state. I know I've had cousins that have participated, and I suspect others know people or participated themselves, or maybe their children have participated. And summer is coming up, and we are interested in knowing just generally how things are going with the Governor's Institute and what kinds of things, summer opportunities students might have through all of you, and with a particular eye to middle and low income Vermonters who might not otherwise have opportunities such as the ones you offer. So with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a wonderful opportunity to just thank you for many, many years of support of the Governor's Institutes of Vermont. I think Senator Pertzlich, you had a student attend, and I hope that was a good experience for them. I'm getting a nod.
You had 3, Senator Hooker?
3.
Oh, fantastic.
I had 2.
All right. So some of you are familiar with the general tone, but I did send along a document yesterday. Hopefully you see it, or you will see it. Just to give you a sense of the history, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you have a crazy plate. I heard the end of the last part. I saw the agenda later. I'm coming with good news to say, we're in good hands. We've got 38-year track record of taking students from Vermont, high school students, and transforming them into the people that they want to become, and giving them the opportunities to access new friends, new skills, new mentors, and a new lease on what their life and career opportunities could be. it was actually very interesting to hear Sophie Statney talking about the characteristics of our state colleges. And our in a normal year, we are in residence on a lot of different campuses across the state, including Castleton, including Linden, and on, UVM included. And we kind of serve a little bit as an entree to what does it mean to be in college, and a little bit of a marketing tool for folks to understand what the Vermont colleges offer, and encouraging folks to stay here in Vermont, or after a time away, return, which is actually my story. I'd love to tell you just a little bit about my involvement, because I think it tells the story of the Institute. I was 15 years old, had a mouthful of braces. I don't know what you all looked like when you were 15 years old, but longer hair than this and braces. I played the trombone. It was my entire life. I just loved to play trombone, and I was passionate about it. I had some support, but when I went to the Governor's Institute on the Arts, I met my people, and they encouraged me to keep going, and they opened up new doors. For example, I learned about salsa music. I was really into jazz music at the time, but I learned about a whole other, culture, Cuban music, Latin music, and something that I hadn't been exposed to before, and really opened up my world of what music could be and how I could participate in it. And it also gave me a network of friends across the state, and the confidence that this was something that if I really wanted to do it, I could pursue it. And long story short, I became a professional musician and have been all around the world with folks like Michael Bolton, Ice Cube, St. Vincent, so it has really been a full circle. And I'm so honored to be back in Vermont now and have the opportunity to provide this kind of transformational experience. Even in just 1 week, 2 weeks, a Vermont high school student can have their world opened up. And I'm so privileged to be a part of that circle, and you should be too, because the support of the Vermont legislature has allowed us to make that affordable and make that an option for a student at no matter what their family's financial situation is. Something you should know, I just want to highlight a few things from what I sent along.
Please.
We give scholarships, or we give financial aid. We call it a sliding scale tuition model. And so basically folks choose where on that scale they fit, where their family's income lines up. And we give some amount of discount from our tuition price to over 80% of our students. So I think there's sometimes a misconception that we are there for just a certain echelon of students, if you will, but we are really available to everyone, and the numbers bear it out that we are giving discounts up to 100% sometimes, or very close, 99%. Our sliding scale goes down to $10 for a 1 week institute.
Elizabeth, may I ask a quick question? Can we have and maybe just a bit of a conversation here as you go along, if you're comfortable with that? How do you reach out to those students? In other words, sometimes, is there a concerted effort to find those students, again, that might not otherwise see your ads, if you will, or know about you?
Absolutely. And I think, so one, just that knowing that we have sliding scale, and actually this year you asked specifically about what's coming up, but 2021, we are pay what you can. So we have a suggested tuition, but it's literally pay what you can. We know it's been a really hard year for families, right, and we want to make it, not even a conceptual barrier about applying for this opportunity. In terms of outreach, we partner with schools. Those are our key partners, and we have touched every school in the state. Most years we have, more than 70 schools participating, usually closer to 80 schools participating. And we serve over 500 students a year. We'd like to serve more. And that's something that we'd be looking to in the future. But we serve a lot more than we used to, and we'd like to continue to grow that and to continue to make sure that cost is not a barrier. In terms of reaching out, we have partnerships with a lot of different nonprofit organizations. I should say we are a nonprofit with the Governor's Institute title. Sometimes folks confuse us for a government agency, but we are an independent nonprofit. And so any investment from the state legislature, it comes through the AOE, but that is then matched at least 3-to-1 by private dollars by us, that we can make that happen. And really that state funding is key to allowing us to make that affordable, to allowing us to offer pay what you can this year, for example. But anyway, we reach out to a lot of partners, Spectrum, the Vermont Housing Authority, lots of boys and girls clubs, teen centers. I was actually just on a call with a woman who works in the Mount Ascutney healthcare system about how we can connect with pediatricians and family doctors and really concentrating on those places where we know we have less of an uptake right now, or we might be able to serve some of the students that we really want to be able to serve at whatever socioeconomic level, whatever family background they might have. For example, we reach out with the New American communities in the state, open to any partnerships that you can think of, as you come across them, because we really do want to make sure we're getting into all those corners.
Senator Chittenden, your hand is up. That's an old one? Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions before I go on?
Senator Hooker.
I'm just curious to know what your budget is, and are you set for this year?
Yeah, so our budget in a normal year, when we have in-person residential institutes and therefore the room and board costs that go to places like Castleton and Linden, that is usually about $1.1 to $1.2 million. This year, it's about $700,000 because we don't have those costs and we are running online programs. As another thing that Sophie mentioned earlier about what is online education? Are people excited about it or not excited about it? Well, if you do it well, it can work for folks. And so that's what we strive to do as well, of making it very creative and hands-on and keeping the hallmarks there. Anyway, so that's our budget, to answer your question. Our appropriation has been level for 17 years. It is about $192,000. And we had a recommendation that go up from Commissioner French last year, but because of COVID and everything, it kind of went by the wayside. So we're looking, we're not asking for that this year, although if that happened, it would be wonderful if it went up. But I think next year we'll be looking to, reinvigorate that discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Just want to highlight a couple other things. We did a long-term outcomes study. And so, as I mentioned, this program has been around for 38 years. And so we have alums in a lot of different stages of life. And when they looked back up to 30 years later, folks were saying 88% of the folks we surveyed said that it was one of the most important experiences of their high school career, of those high school years, that it really was a seminal turning point for them as they gained confidence and awareness of what kind of career opportunities they could have. And anecdotally, we hear folks say it changes their life. So I just, we have a lot of data on it. We have a lot of anecdotes about it. And I'd like to invite any of you to visit, whether online or in person, in the coming year or two, because it really is magic. And, there's a science behind it, but in the end, it's magic. It's people who care so much and believe in creating a space for students where they feel supported and that they can be themselves and that they can find the best version of themselves. And I was just, speaking with another person this morning who was saying, well, is it really for anyone? And I said, yes. If you are motivated enough to do it and show up and do the work and participate, it is for you. We understand that not everyone has had an opportunity to take higher level, engineering courses. Like, we offer an engineering program to help folks expand their possibilities. And maybe some folks are already down the line and taking advanced physics, and there's something there for them. And there's also something there for someone who's just exploring. And there's actually a really lovely mix when those folks come together.
Great.
Are there other questions?
I don't see any. Senator Lyons, you're unmuted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do have a question. Did you play the trombone around the world?
Yes.
That's awesome. With I'm asking this for a reason. It does relate to Governor's Institute. So, what was it with professional organizations or with with your own group or?
So I have been a freelance musician for many, many years, and I was based in New York City for a long time. But I grew up here in Vermont, and I've moved back and live in my childhood home again. So it's nice to be
awesome.
home. Yeah.
But Governor's Institute truly influenced you and your work.
Yeah.
Our families had similar experiences, so I was really fascinated to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. It's been a fascinating career, and I'm now so glad that it kind of comes around and I can offer that to other folks.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure thing. I think just, to highlight that again, I hear a lot of discussion about folks saying, are we losing our young people? Are they going elsewhere? And I think we have such rich opportunities right here. And it's okay if folks go and then come back too, that they experience something else and bring those perspectives and integrate them back into Vermont and bring the best of that back. So I think we do a good job. I mean, I know for myself, my professional and personal network has a lot to do with the Governor's Institutes and that those initial years, dating back to when I was 15, I still have friends across the state from that experience.
Can I ask you, does the Governor's Institute encourage learning other languages?
Great question.
Yeah. So we have rotated our topics through the years. It depends on what we have offered. For a long time, we had an institute on Asian cultures, which had a second year attached to it where everyone went to China the following year. So they studied about various Asian cultures, and then the following year took a trip to China. That was heavily funded by the Freeman Foundation. So at the moment, it's not directly aimed at languages, but I do get requests from folks about starting new institutes. And certainly there's exposure to a lot of cultures. We'd try to have a very, very diverse staff. That's something we're working on improving. But I think we've got a good start towards it. So it's not direct, but it's a past and a potential future.
Terrific. Because it's difficult to travel today, but
right.
Sometimes you don't have to leave home to leave home.
Well, one advantage too of the online learning is that we can bring in guest artists without any travel costs from anywhere. So
yeah, that's terrific.
Thing. Senator Campion asked about what are we offering this summer. So I'd love to let you know about that.
Yeah, before you do that, I just want to see if Senator Lyons, are your good questions, and then Senator Hooker.
I was just looking at the offerings for this summer, so I'm glad you're going into that, Elizabeth. And, I guess I do have a question when you're discussing this. Is there a minimum number of students that participants that you need, and what's that? What is that process like as you're developing what you're offering in the summer?
Could you just restate that a little bit? What do you mean the process?
How do you determine whether or not you're offering the particular institutes that are listed?
Sure. I should say that several of them are very, very long running. The Arts Institute was the founding institute, so that's 38 years old. Our Science and Technology is quite up there, as well as our Global Issues Institute. So those are very long standing. Some of the other ones are newer. We actually have had astronomy the past few years. We're not able to offer it this summer, but we hope it will return for 2022. So that's another one that you're not seeing there, but that's kind of in our current mix. In terms of deciding what to offer, we kind of take the pulse of what we hear students are interested in. We are one of the largest training programs for STEM. And in particular, we offer incentives for folks who identify as young women to come at a lower rate. to encourage participation and try to even out the gender imbalance in those fields. So that's a consideration. We really want to keep that. We've seen a huge demand for our health and medicine institute, and that's in partnership with the Northern Vermont AHEC, Area Health Education Center. And that's been extremely successful. And I can't imagine that letting up given our climate around COVID and everyone's sort of consciousness around health issues right now. I think we're looking to open up career paths for folks that are well-paying, good jobs, interesting jobs. It's not always about a direct path to a job. It is about exploring, but it's great to have kind of both in the picture. So for this summer, we're offering the arts, which encompasses writing. It's a little more expensive when we're in person, but we're not really offering dance this year, but we're offering songwriting, so touching on music. We're offering theater making. In fact, one of our faculty is also faculty at NVU at Johnson. So there's a nice parallel there. So the arts, engineering, they explore a whole bunch of things that's focused on energy and like learning more about energy systems and how they work and how what we do affects them. Entrepreneurship, and that takes place usually at Vermont Technical College, and that's for college credit as well. So we have two for college credit, entrepreneurship and environmental science and technology. That one is normally at UVM, and we're doing our best to, even when online, again, be interactive, hands-on, so those students are going to go out and test the water quality of their stream with a little kit that we're going to send them, and they're going to report back and get their data connected UVM lab and really get the experience of presenting their research with each other. So it is kind of a hybrid model, and it's not just taking in information on a screen. We're very much about interactive and hands-on learning. We have global issues and youth action, health and medicine, as I already mentioned, mathematical sciences, and technology and design, which has a lot to do with microcontrollers, coding, a lot of the skills that we know lead to excellently paid jobs with the right path. We're also running for the first time a year-round institute this year on leadership, and that's ongoing. So that takes place on 1 weekend a month with a few other ancillary activities, but primarily 1 weekend a month throughout the academic year. Did I answer your question?
You did. Thank you.
Great. It's a lot, and I think it's all about having folks understand and come and see what we do, because each of those programs has a unique strength and a unique perspective. And I think the common theme is that they're immersive, they're hands-on, they're interactive, and transformational.
And it sounds like some of it's going to be in person this summer.
So it's online.
It's all online. Okay.
It's all online this
Okay.
summer. We made that call earlier on. We know that the vaccines are changing, but we know we can deliver an incredible experience based on last year. If we are able to bring folks together for a day, for a campus tour, barbecue, face-to-face time, we will, but that's sort of TBD.
And what campuses are you trying to use our state colleges in UVM in general?
Yes, we have many partners, and they include the state colleges. Right now, we don't have a partnership with Johnson's campus, but we have in the past, and that would be something we'd be interested in for the future.
Okay. Any other questions? Elizabeth, any other comments or anything you think we should know?
I think I've covered most things. I just, again, wanted to really say thank you because I have kind of sat in for this, and I heard one of your sessions last week, and I just see how much work you do behind the scenes that I'm sure folks don't thank you for all the time and looking out for these incredible young people. So thank you for that.
Thank you for everything that you're doing. And I suspect appropriations will have you in, if they haven't already, as it relates to the budget and other dollars coming in. And then we will likely have you back as well.
Great. Well, it was my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It was ours. Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Okay, committee. Returning to H81. I know we had some discussion yesterday, and we did hear back. There are a couple of other people that would like to testify. I know Mr. Nichols is here. Good to see you, Jay. As well as I believe Ms. Siglowski, and good to see you. And so why don't we transition right into H81? We'll then have a committee discussion, and I'll let all of you decide what direction you are interested in moving in from here. So with that, good to see you both. Not sure if who would like to begin? Mr. Nichols?
I think I'm starting, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We're just going by the list that we saw from Jeannie.
Okay,
so.
terrific. It's a
I
good.
don't know about you, but we do whatever Jeannie tells us. That's been our
Smart. Yes, we're with you there.
So for the record, Jay Nichols, Executive Director of the Vermont Principals Association, testifying today on H81. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this brief testimony. Title 16-2102 created a Commission on Public School Health Benefits. And the purpose for that was negotiations over health benefits to move away from the local level and move to the state level. And when the commission was created, the law in a lot of ways ignored school employees that happen to be administrators. The commission was set up with 10 members total, 5 of who were representatives of school employees and 5 who were representatives of school employers, i.e. school board members. And we are on the labor side on this issue, principals are and school leaders are. 4 members of the labor side were representing the greatest number of teachers, administrators, and municipal school employees in the state from a labor organization, which obviously means Vermont NEA. The second part of that, which is what our ask is about, is that 1 member appointed by the labor organization representing the second greatest number of teachers, administrators, and municipal school employees in the state. Unfortunately, this union-centric approach has left school administrators essentially out in the cold with no real representation. We respectfully ask that the law be amended to require at least 1 representative to be a school administrator appointed by the Vermont Principals Association. We have almost 700 members, and they feel as though they're not adequately represented. This is not to be critical of the current commission members. However, having someone on the labor side of the equation that actually has an understanding of the roles and massive responsibilities of school and school system leadership is only fair, since our members are required to adhere to any agreement made regarding their health benefits. Principals and other educational administrators have traditionally taken less pay, often in order to receive more in benefits. Most administrators in Vermont did not pay 20% of insurance prior to the new law. Some got 100% insurance, many get 90%. Now with the proposed changes by H81, most principals also could be hit with a sliding scale that would adversely affect them. This despite the fact that administrators work many more hours, many more days, and many more weeks in a school year than most support staff and teachers, and unquestionably have a great deal more responsibility. For public disclosure, my wife has been a paraeducator for almost 30 years, so I know of which I talk, I think. The fact that we have a shortage in people willing to heed the call of school leadership leads me to believe that we should not propose laws that will further limit the rationale for talented educators to pursue educational leadership. Yesterday, I heard Senate Education Committee members discuss, after the testimony of Julie Filberti, I hope I'm saying that right, that having a seat at the table is important. Well, that is our number 1 request today. School leaders are employees who do not have a seat at the table, and I would like to see the law changed to rectify that so that we can be at the table. And subject to any questions, that's all I have for official testimony. Thank you.
I know that's very helpful. Did you share this with the House?
No, it didn't seem like we really had an opportunity to share it anywhere with the House.
Because I mean, I'm just trying to get
with general affairs.
Yes.
Yeah. So when it was in general affairs, I sent them written testimony and I asked to testify, and I never was allowed to testify, but I was allowed to submit written testimony. And then we were under the understanding that it was hopefully going to go to Health Education where we could testify, and then Health Education chose not to hear it, evidently. And so that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. I'll loop back with Yeah, and I think both House and the Senate, I understand things get lost in the shuffle, but for it to have been in the House for almost 6 weeks, for you not to have had an opportunity to say your piece on that is unfortunate. And there are, I wonder, and I'm just thinking aloud here, because I think there is an interest, I could be wrong, in keeping and working with people who have an upcoming deadline. I wonder, and if Mr. Demarais is, I don't see him right here right now, I wonder if we can do this in 2 parts, but that's a conversation for another time. Senator Perschlick and then Senator Terenzini, please. And you're muted, Senator.
Sorry. Thank you. Jay, you said that you thought it was a union-centric approach. Can you explain why you think it's a union-centric approach?
Well, simply because in the actual law itself, it says, and I'm looking down here, 4 members appointed by the labor organization representing the greatest number of teachers, administrators, and municipal school employees. And then B of that same statute says, and then 1 member appointed by the labor organization representing the second greatest number of employees. School administrators, Senator Perchlik, are not very often in unions.
Right.
That's the issue, because so many of them have belonged to single school districts, where places like Burlington, South Burlington, where I used to be an administrator, those places had unions often, but single school districts, it was really no purpose for that. So throughout history, principals have not been part of unions. And this also includes special ed directors, business managers, superintendents, whoever's not represented by a union that is on the labor side of this law.
And then how many are appointed by the school boards? 5?
I think they get all 5. I mean, they're on the opposite side of this with us. We'd be negotiating against them, obviously, but I think it's 5.
Right. Well, that was what I thought, and so I just found a hard time saying 5 and 5 is centric to the unions when it's.
Oh, I don't mean in the overall negotiations. The Vermont NEA is representing us on this. What I'm saying is, on our side, principals aren't really having the representation that we'd like. We'd like to have somebody on our side of the equation, and right now we don't.
Right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's union centric in that of the employees, they're all represented by the union, not that the whole negotiation is union centric.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wasn't there a thing where we did, I remember from last year, and maybe that was in the bill last year, where we clarified that the administrators are separate, that the superintendents, maybe it was just superintendents and not the others you're talking about?
That's correct. And it didn't end up going anywhere anyway, but it never included principals.
It was just the superintendents. It pulled them out of the whole negotiation.
Which from having done a lot of negotiations myself and had been a superintendent for a long time, that makes sense to me, because the superintendent is working directly for the board.
Right.
Whereas the other employees are supposed to be, including principals, working directly for the superintendent. And
that's still in H81. That remained, or did that not?
No, I don't think that's in there. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't. Sue would know more about that than I do. I just knew that the part about school leaders was not in there. Having it, I think they presented something on H63, which is the other thing. Senator Campion's H63 was presented, and I asked to testify on that, and wasn't given the opportunity to testify on that either. And then that got basically killed and turned into just 81 in general affairs.
Jay, did you bring this up last year on S226?
I did bring this up last year in a committee meeting, and Senator Brove told me that he didn't want to discuss it. That's essentially it. And I believe you were in the room.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Terenzini.
Just a clarifying question, actually, for you, Senator Campion. After it leaves here, where's the next stop for H81?
Appropriations.
Appropriations. Thank you.
And they'll look at the financial impact as well as the dollar amount in there. Senator Lyons.
So I don't remember looking at the group that Jay is talking about. That's not it's not currently in our bill, it's in the underlying statute, is that right? Yeah, so I would be interested in looking at that. It seems like a reasonable concern, an issue for us to consider. May not do anything, but we certainly should, I think, look at it.
Sure, we can certainly do that. Senator Hooker. Oh, Senator Lawrence, did you have a follow-up?
No, I was just going to say, but we might do something. I didn't want to be so negative.
Mr. Nichols, you mentioned that the NEA is representing the principals as well as the others, correct? So can you just clarify for me what having a principal-specific representative on the board, how that's going to make a difference?
Well, I think having somebody that actually understands the job that's entailed. I mean, I can make a stronger argument that you'd be better off having 5 principals on the board than 5 teachers on the board, because principals have all been teachers. They understand how school districts run. They understand how, what is involved in every job. Whereas if you're a teacher and you've never been a principal, you have no idea about the complexity of that job. So we're just saying, let us have one person on that committee, a principal or an assistant principal or a special education director. It doesn't matter. Somebody who's got administrative experience that understands, the immense, massive amount of work for those positions.
So would this bill, H81, would allow lower paid school staff to negotiate a different premium contribution and out-of-pocket contribution? And would having a principal on the board allow another level of contribution? Or are you saying,
No, I don't think that's really the issue. I think that what H81 is going to do, if it's passed, is will allow for like a sliding scale where people can take into consideration the amount of money an employee makes. Mm-hmm. And one of our biggest issues with that is if you're going to do that, then you need to take into consideration the amount of work a person does. Principals don't get summers off. They don't have a school year calendar. They work a lot more nights. They have a lot more responsibility. They're on call on the weekends, as are most administrators. And all that stuff should be factored in. It's pretty hard to factor it in if you haven't experienced it. Having a principal there that can say, hey, listen, you're talking about sliding scale, but I work 260 days. You work 175 or 185, whatever it might be, just so they can have that conversation and be adequately represented is all we're asking for.
I think we should do it by the hour.
That would be great for principals.
Would be paying a lot less as well. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
We'll do that. We can do that for senators too.
Good.
Senator Persley. You're muted, sir.
Twice in a row. So Jay, what you're saying is that possibly the healthcare negotiation would involve a different level of payment for healthcare premiums or out-of-pocket expenses for principals and others that are at the administrative level.
No. What I'm saying is if you change the law, you're allowing for that negotiation to take place, regardless of who's representing the group. So I would think that you'd want to have somebody representing the group. I would want to have a paraeducator on there. I'd want to have 2 or 3 teachers on there and an administrator on there. So I'm not saying that would necessarily happen, but by allowing the changes that H81 could potentially allow, depending on what happens at the collectively bargained agreement at the state level, you could be opening up for that. That has nothing to do with the principal being added. Having a principal being added or an administrator being added simply makes sure that those folks are represented, and that's got to be 600 or 700 people at least. Right,
but if they're represented as part of the group, you're not suggesting that the negotiation might include. It could include a different payment for principals, right?
If this include a different payment for anybody, any different type of category. If you open up that lens.
But you're not advocating for that.
No, I'm not advocating for that. No.
But you think just having the principals and others as part of the team, they will help to come up with a better negotiated settlement that would meet all the teachers plus all the principals.
I think that's very possible, but I think more importantly, everybody will feel like they're represented.
Okay, and can you remind me the Principals Association's view of the bill? You're opposed to the bill. Is that right?
H81?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing that we are opposed to is the possibility of the sliding scale. We don't think that should be in there. That does worry my members.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I tried to mention before is that for years, a lot of principals did not take big raises because they would take things like more insurance or vacation, or they'd freeze their salary if their budget was tough. And when the law changed and they became part of this collectively bargained agreement, many of them all of a sudden actually lost money. They got pay cuts. And if I was having 100 people apply for principal's jobs right now, I wouldn't be that worried about it. We're getting 2 or 3 people applying for principal's jobs. It's a huge worry. So I really don't want to do anything that's going to have us have less teachers heed the call to leadership.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Chittenden.
Well, picking up on Senator Perchlik's question there, I thought I was following, but now I'm just want to clarify. This group will be negotiating healthcare for statewide educators, including paraeducators, and what they negotiate right now will also apply to the healthcare condition for our principals.
Already does.
Okay, so then you should be represented there. This
Absolutely, that's our thought. Yes.
All right.
Only fair.
Senator Terenzini.
Jay, are you saying that in your opinion we're having a lack of candidates apply for principal positions?
It's not my opinion. It's just fact. We have more people in the state of Vermont that have the principal's license that don't apply for principal jobs than we do have people that are trying to become principals. So in many places, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I for one, I take your word for it. I just find it unique and interesting. I just served on a principal hiring committee last week, and we had 38 applications. So I thought, what you're saying in that, I mean, we must be very lucky.
Are you in Rutland City?
I don't know if it was public knowledge.
What district are you?
Rutland County, a school in Rutland County.
Yeah. Well, if it's in Rutland City, there's an advantage.
I don't know if it's public knowledge that we had so many applications. So.
All right. But we can get lots of applicants for South Burlington, for some of the bigger school districts that pay more. And oftentimes, though, those applicants are people that are already principals in our other schools. And so when they leave, then we have a rural school that doesn't pay as much, so has to try to hire that position. And they might only get 2 or 3 applicants. 2 years ago, in North Country got 0 applicants. They had to take one of their elementary principals and make him the principal of North Country Union High School. And that happens. Pulteney just went through the same thing. They've been a whole year without a principal. And now they're in a situation where they get a retired superintendent that's covering for the rest of the year as they try to find somebody for next year. It's getting harder and harder, especially in our rural towns.
And please, sir, I don't want you to think I just said that to try to prove you wrong. I just found it unique that you made that statement, and then we had such a great success. So anyways, interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Nichols or comments from Mr. Nichols? Any thoughts on Mr. Nichols' request at this time? Please, Senator Lyons.
I just think I think we should look at it. It doesn't sound unreasonable to me at all. And maybe by looking at the underlying statute, we might change our minds. But I can't imagine why. It just seems fair.
Senator Perchlik, please.
Already unmuted. I'm prepared this time. The only thing I wonder about is the whole point of these negotiations is have an equal balance between the union and non-union, or the employers, and having the principals are in there but not working with the union seems like you're throwing off that balance in a way that could be problematic. And then if it's the principals, we took out the superintendents. I'm pretty sure that language is in H81, then why not, you add every single category that why not the business managers? They have a very different job too. And why not the others that aren't in there? It seems like it's problematic to change it from an even balance between the union and the employers.
Can I comment on that?
Please.
Thank you, Senator Perchlik. Just two quick things. One, if you took all the administrators out, our association never asked to be part of that in the beginning. That would be fine. But I think instead of looking at it from a union versus school board perspective, it might be more advantageous at a state level to look at it from an employee versus an employer level. We're employees. We negotiate with the board. A lot of my job is working with principals that are having problems with their school board or with their superintendent or whatever it might be. So our goal would be to work with the members of the union to try to craft the best deal we could for the employees. Sorry, Sue, but that is what we would be trying to do.
So please correct me if I'm wrong. If we were to, first of all, I feel as the chair, in this case, I'm just a facilitator of this conversation. If we were to make this change, it goes back to the House, and we either have a committee of conference or they agree with that change, which again can be fine. I know that there was some interest in accommodating the April 1 deadline, but again, there may be also another path to do this. I don't know where it, which I can talk to Ledge Council a little bit about, but I'll just raise that with the committee, and people will have to decide. Yes, Senator Hooker.
Yeah, I share your concern about the timing, because I know that we've talked about negotiations starting the 1st of April. So I think that we have to be cognizant of that. But I do appreciate Mr. Nichols verifying that this is a bargaining bill. This is not a healthcare bill. It has nothing to do with premiums and stuff, but just a seat
at the table. Mm-hmm. And who has the opportunity. Yeah. Senator Perchlik and then Senator Terenzini.
Yeah, one more thing on this. So,
sorry, Senator, and then Senator Lyons. Okay.
So, Jay, the principals were represented by the union in the last round, right? And they were allowed in the negotiations to have different payments. So, are you not happy with the solution that came out? I thought you.
No, we weren't allowed that. Different payments didn't come out of it. Everybody had the same payment.
Well, that was allowed to be negotiated in the first year.
Right. Yes, and it may have been we may have supported that as a group. We didn't ever have a chance to really weigh in on it. We weren't part of the process, but no, it has nothing to do with that settlement whatsoever.
But you're worried about potential impacts in the future.
I am. Yeah, and I'm also my members are just saying, why are we not represented on this? And I think they're right.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're represented by the union.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Terenzini.
Jay, maybe this isn't a question for you, but I sit here and I think this is a decision that we obviously have to decide on, but I go back and forth, to be honest with you, about H81. I've received emails from school districts down at the Massachusetts border all the way to the Canadian border. And overall, school boards have asked us not to support this bill. And they say it's going to have negative financial impacts to the taxpayers. It's going to make budgets tougher to create. It's going to raise property taxes. Do you have a response or a counterbalance to that?
I don't know if I have a counterbalance to that. I mean, my background, I was a principal for a long time, but I was a superintendent even longer. And I used to represent one of the biggest systems on the Canadian border. And I'm probably known as pretty cheap and pretty fiscally conservative. Just put it that way. I think the Vermont NEA would share that thought. So I definitely want to see us find a way to get healthcare costs down. I just think for us, the issue here is whether you go forward with 81 or not, if we're going to have a statewide bargaining commission that has employers on one side, employees on the other, then administrators should be represented on the employees side. That's all. So I understand where the school board members are coming from. Totally, I totally get that, Senator Terenzini.
Senator Lyons.
Well, I was thinking if we are under the gun in terms of time crunch, if we decided to do something about this and include a change to the group, there may not be time to make the change this go round, but we could certainly put a date certain, going forward, and then that gives some time for other committees to get involved. I'm thinking, suppose we said it'll go into place next year, then there's certainly time for discussion within the House committees and our committee as well. But so I don't think we have to make the absolute final decision, but maybe we can open the door up a little bit.
Senator Chittenden.
So to Senator Terenzini's point, I've heard from many school boards as well. And what I've taken, and tell me if this is not consistent, and I think it's germane to this discussion, the school boards do like a lot of what's in H81. They just don't like everything in H81. There are some pieces of language specifically with regards to why it settled the way it settled that I think they are welcoming of. So with that being the case, I don't know if Jay wants to clarify whether or not the Principals Association is opposed to H81, or you see it as ultimately an improvement over the language that will otherwise overrule these negotiations. That would be helpful for me. But as for adding you to this body, I'd love for the NEA to just swoop in and say, we'd be happy to have one of our three or members be from the Principals Association, because they get to choose. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but since you'll be represented, I'd be interested to hear what Jeff Fannin has to say about working with you to have you be one, or you help appoint one of the people that will be a part of this group negotiating for healthcare that will affect your constituency.
In terms of Jeff Fannin, we'll make the commitment right now that we'll pick somebody who was a Vermont NEA member, which is not hard to do because most of my members were Vermont NEA members at one time as teachers. Again, I'm not trying to get into I supported the idea of a statewide bargaining commission 15 years ago, and I supported a statewide teachers contract. So I'm not going to argue against what I said a long time ago. What I will say is, though, specifically on this commission, our biggest issue is that we just want to make sure that we're represented. And if administrators were completely taken out and allowed to negotiate on their own, like they did for the previous 150 years, that would be okay. And if you're going to keep us in the bargaining group, then allow us to have somebody to represent us that's actually done the job. That's really, Senator Chittenden, I'm not trying to ride on the fence on this, but that's really the point that I want to drive home here from our association.
Senator Perchlik.
Sorry to keep going around on this, but I'm thinking of my position in the state government union, and just to hold the way I understand union bargaining collective bargaining working, that they're members, people that work for the state that are members of the union, but they're represented by the union. We don't have them get a seat at the table to say, well, I'm not part of the union, so I should also be part of the negotiating team. So I just think it just seems like a bigger deal to add somebody to the 5 and 5 thing. I understand the Principal Association's position and thinking there, but I think it's a bigger deal. And I think pulling them out, because it is a decent number, goes counter to the whole goal of having a statewide thing. So, right now, I guess I'm where Philip Ruth was last year, and not wanting to add it in right now, not seeing how big of a problem it is, because it is the bargaining on the healthcare. There's opportunities for them to bargain on the other side for the pay if something, if they don't feel they got a fair shake in the healthcare bargaining.
Sorry, we have a little snafu in appropriations at the moment, and part of me would like to see Senator Perchlik go down and help them figure that out. I don't know if you're willing. It's S13, which is the weighting study. Would you be willing to do that, Senator Perchlik? You're muted, sir.
How do I do that?
I will send you, I will write to, and I do apologize, everyone. I just, it's that time of year. Why don't we take, if people don't mind, could we just take a 5-minute pause, and Senator Perchlik, you and I can just stay on here for a moment and chat? Okay, Senate Education returning to H81. Mr. Nichols, thanks for your testimony and for raising the issue that you raised. Ms. Zaglowski, please.
Thank you, Chair Campion. I think you're going to be happy to hear that I'm going to try to use the Senator Doyle approach this afternoon. As I understand it, to state the problem and propose the solution. So I only have a page and a half of written testimony. It's posted on your website. And I don't think we need to pull it up. But as we see it, the problem is that Section 4 of H81 removes the following language from the current law. You're going to be familiar with this because we've talked about it a lot. It's the premium responsibility percentage and out-of-pocket expenses for each plan tier for the participating employees. That language is removed from the law in H81. It's crossed out. And the removal of this language is a significant policy change that tips the scales in favor of one side. So the solution is adding balancing language to Section 6 of H81 so that it reads, and in my written testimony, I've put the new language in bold, but it is, in reaching a decision, the arbitrator or arbitrators shall determine which of the two submissions most appropriately balances appropriate access to healthcare benefits and reasonable cost containment to ensure the financial sustainability of the plan. And as you know, there are 5 factors currently in the law that the arbitrator has to consider. And we have recommended adding 2 factors to the law: actuarial value and percentage increase or decrease in ed spending that is likely to occur. And we do understand through your committee discussion that the committee is not going to add those 2 factors. So given that, we strongly urge you to add the balancing language that I just spoke of. And we strongly urge you to add that to the bill, making clear to the arbitrator that balancing is required is the crux of the matter. It will also add an appropriate and necessary guide for the employer and employee negotiators. Striking a balance between appropriate access and cost is the reason bargaining occurs. Adding balancing language will not cause the bill to be unbalanced. It is what is needed to rebalance H81. In conclusion, I ask you to please ask yourselves how your decision on H81 will appear to school boards and the Vermonters in the communities that they and you represent. You have received letters from school board chairs posted on the committee's website showing you that the cost of providing health benefits is causing a reduction in student opportunities in many districts. The language removed from current law by H81 regarding premiums and out-of-pocket was a cost control measure in the law. If you're not willing to put in balancing language after giving the employee side a major policy change in their favor, what kind of message does that send about what is important to the Senate Education Committee? Thank you.
Well, there we go. Throwing down the gauntlet, I guess, in some regards. Let's see. Committee. Comments, questions for Ms. Zaglowski. Please, Senator Chittenden.
So, Ms. Zaglowski, I appreciate this. I love how you framed this piece. So I love the Doyle approach. What I'm trying to reconcile with what you presented to me is what I think I understand to be the current in statute language of Act 11, which I can paste this into the chat, but there is already some language that will still govern this next negotiation addressing the cost of things. I'm reading that in reaching a decision, the arbitrator or arbitrators shall give weight to the evidence, documents, written material, arguments presented, following factors, including the financial ability of the educational fund and school districts across the state to pay for the cost of healthcare benefits and coverage. And it goes on, comparisons of healthcare benefits, also the average consumer prices for goods. And so what I can't reconcile is, why do we need this additional language when I see the existing language always already addressing or forcing the arbiters to address cost and the ability of the school districts to pay? Where am I missing something?
So Senator Chitin, I think what you're missing is that by taking out the language regarding premiums and out of pocket, that's cost control language that's in the statute. That's being taken out. So even though you've got those five factors were there the first time. But if there's not any balancing language that's added, it's going to be, the statute becomes out of balance by taking out that premium and out of pocket language.
May I follow up?
Senator Chittenden, yes.
The testimony from Jeff Fannin, I tried to raise that point as well, and he had a good counterpoint, which is arguing that this language just allows that to be negotiated. So we're not deciding that it's definitely going to be at different tiers. It just gives this group, just like the VSEA, to put it on the table that we will agree or not to have it at the same levels. But instead, our committee here is not saying that it has to be at the different levels, but that during your negotiating process, they can use that as one of the things to find an equitable agreement to benefit all of their constituents, while also keeping in mind our ability to pay for these services. Is that not a fair statement, that this is just allowing for them to negotiate whether or not there will be different tiers and not mandating that there will be different tiers?
It's not mandating that there'll be different tiers, but it is allowing it to be negotiated. And if it can be negotiated, then it can be in a last best offer and be chosen by the arbitrator. So it can be imposed by an arbitrator. And it's very important to have language in the statute that guides the arbitrator, because unfortunately, the arbitrator has not sat in on all these committee meetings and heard what all of us think is important and what you think is important. They need to look at what the language is in the law. And so it needs to be clear in the law.
The last piece, Chair.
Yes.
So I'm struggling with this. So I just want to make everybody happy. And then, everybody say this is just the perfect language. I don't think that's going to happen here. But where I'm pausing on the language you brought forward is the other argument that still is dominant in my mind that has been made, is that would be above and beyond what we already have in statute with the other negotiations for labor unions. Can you try to make the case for me as to why the healthcare negotiation requires additional language over and above what we have for VSEA and negotiating their labor, municipal entities, and otherwise? Why do we need this additional rigid threshold, or additional language, not even rigid threshold, but language calling out and speaking to the cost aspect of this, more so than what is already baked in?
So I think one major difference here is that I believe with those state negotiations for like the state employees, the legislature votes to fund those, whatever the results are. And in this case, that's not the case. They are, it's included in school district budgets throughout the state. So it's a bit of a different setup. And you have, the legislature has control on the back end of those other situations.
Senator Perchlik.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Glasky. So I was unclear why you think it's unbalanced to have that. Why do you think that shifts it one way or the other?
The reason that I think it shifts it is because you're removing in H81 the language that requires premium responsibility percentage and out of pocket to be the same for each plan tier for all participating employees. That language is cost control language. It's getting taken out. And so that changes the dynamic, and it tips the scale in favor of one side by taking out that language. And I'm not really sure that adding in balancing language is going to tip it, to be even, but it would at least be something, and it would at least send the arbitrator the message about the expectation for issuing a decision that is balanced.
Right. I guess I'm not seeing it so as an unbalancing because, the teachers on the other side are also taxpayers and also want to have, a healthy system. And also that one difference in payments may or may not be negligible in the overall healthcare costs of the state and of the taxpayers for the education system, because there's so many other things at play. So it doesn't seem like, in my mind, that it's, tipping the scales one way. It's just allowing for a different negotiation, which kind of may or may not be negotiated, one, and may or may not actually change the price of healthcare. It may or may not have a bunch of other benefits. So it's not as clear to me that it's an unbalancing. I get it that it's a change from the statute. It's not a change from the way the bargaining went last time, but I get that point. And I had another question. Oh, about the extra language about trying to tell the arbitrator to weigh it differently. But in addition to what Senator Chittenden said about the existing language, it seems like that's what arbitrators do. Like, aren't they already balancing everything? Like, why do we need to tell them to balance things? Like, what is it that an arbitrator does if they're not kind of looking at both sides and the different impacts? You know what I mean?
Well, you said a lot there. So I think on your first point, I probably would just disagree with you and say it will be interesting to look back in a couple of years and see what the impact of this is. And as far as your second question goes, I think we saw with the first round of bargaining that it is important in this situation to provide guardrails for the process, because the first decision was so lacking.
Right. And I agree we needed to have guidelines of saying, this is how you need to explain yourself. And maybe the arbitrator did all the things that we wanted, in this case, he to do, but maybe, he just didn't write it down. So he's like, yeah, you got to write it down and explain it all. I agree with that part, but I don't know if we need to say, oh, by the way, here's a double extra balancing language.
I don't think it's double or extra. It's really the first time balancing is, and the only time that balancing is mentioned in the statute or as in the bill, as far as I can see. So I don't think it's.
Isn't that what an arbitrator does, is balance the two sides? I mean, find the best result?
An arbitrator does balance the two sides, but they need to look at the law that that is applicable to what they're deciding. So.
Right. Okay. That's fair.
Senators, I am getting to the point where I can't make a motion to move things, and I don't want to rush anyone. I want people to have the time that they need. But I think we could, and I appreciate everything that we continue to hear. It's starting, and I could be misinterpreting. It's just the back and forth. I think we've heard what we need to hear. And so I'm looking for senators to propose amendments, to propose idea changes, concept changes, language changes. I'm looking for, we could certainly move something this afternoon or tomorrow, depending on how everyone feels. I want us to go in eyes wide open, and a couple things I'll say about that. I think we're trying here to, and please others weigh in, we are trying to benefit low income or low wage workers, I would say, making certain that those who are working at our schools, making certain that they have a voice at the table in this regard. And I believe, I wasn't here on the committee last year, but I remember some of this discussion in the Senate. I believe that's the genesis of this work. We can certainly, I see moving in two different directions. We can vote and advance this down to approps where they can take additional testimony, learn more about the financial impacts, et cetera. They can even assess, some of the work in the bill. If it doesn't move, and that is again up to the committee, then this would certainly impact these upcoming April negotiations. So I just want to give everybody the background that they need and the information they need, and also to understand the timeline as it relates to this work. Senator Chittenden.
I support moving this out of our committee to appropriations. So if that's not a motion today that you're ready for, Chair, I'm happy to make it today. I don't know if we need to wait at all, but I just want to say one thing on Jay Nichols' testimony. I fully hope and support him working with Jeff Fannin to find somebody that they can both agree is going to think of the principles in these negotiations. I reflect on my GMT experience. The administration of the Green Mountain Transit often had to accepted the health terms negotiated with labor, and they didn't feel like they were always represented the way that we were trying to create parity. So I see that to create or to break down some of that us versus them that you too often see in organizations with labor unions, I really hope that Jeff Fannin and the NEA, who I believe is going to be the one determined to be able to appoint 3 members, works with Jay Nichols to make sure the principals, who do an extremely important and hard job in our schools, has somebody that they feel has the experience, the connections, and the right will to represent the principals in these negotiations.
Senator Hooker, and then Senator Lyons.
I agree with Senator Chittenden, and I think that our purpose as a committee is to look at this as a collective bargaining bill. And as far as the finances go, the Appropriations Committee is far more in tune of what is necessary in that regard. So I would agree that we should move it forward today.
Senator Lyons.
Well, as much as I hate to agree with Senator Chittenden, I agree with Senator Chittenden. So yeah, I think Jay Nichols raises a very important point, and I agree. I hope that folks can get together and resolve some of the issues that we've heard about. So, and I do agree with you, Senator Chittenden. For once, I know it's been a long struggle.
Made my day, Jenny. Senator.
Senator Persler.
I do not agree with Senator Chittenden, but I do agree with Senator Lyons.
Great. Great.
Oh, we're such a bad committee.
I know, right? Okay, so I someone can make a motion, or we can wait. I look to the committee on that, since chairs cannot make motions.
I come from chair.
Please.
I come from a city council where we're always cautious about motioning things that haven't been necessarily warned. Is it at all inappropriate to make the motion this afternoon? I see Senator Terenzini is not with us.
Yep. So we did put it on the agenda for a possible vote, but that said, point well taken. We will put it on the agenda for tomorrow for a vote, and that will give. I will let the pro tem know, and this, with rules, suspensions, etc., I believe we can still work out the timing. When I did the calendar over the weekend, I think we'll be okay. And that also gives others, and I think that is the fairest way to do it. Any discussion on that or concern? Okay. I will let the pro tem know that that is our intention, to move the bill tomorrow to appropriations. It doesn't preclude them from getting started on some of this work, even though I know they have other work that they're doing. And it also gives Senator Perslick time to start drafting his floor report on this bill, which will take longer than Herman Melville took to write his American classic, Moby Dick. I'm hoping he has his notes from last year. Thank you all. Just an update on S100. I had a good early morning conversation with Senators Starr and Pearson. They are working on the dollar amount with the Appropriations Committee on S100. I've also had a conversation or a text chat with Mr. Nichols, Ms. Siglowski, and Mr. Francis. They know that that Appropriations is looking at that question of from where should the money come, and that is their question. But we still, Senator Pearson and Senators Starr are also reviewing the Agency of Education language. I believe you were in there this morning, Mr. Desmarais?
I was just there this afternoon, just before this.
In agriculture or in, were you in ag this morning?
I was in ag. Boy, where was I this morning? I was just in Senate Appropriations talking about S13 and S100.
Okay. Do you want to provide us any updates? I know that Senator Lyons had a 415, but there are others here who might just want to hear a little bit of where things are at.
Sure. So on S100, it's all about where the money is coming from.
Yep.
And I think they wanted to come back to you maybe and have that conversation a bit further. And also to see what federal funds might be available. If there's going to be a essential source of funding, okay, for the next couple of years, can extra funds be used or some federal funds? That debate's very much alive, so not clear where that's going.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
Yeah, that debate's very much alive.
Okay, yeah.
So that's really the central issue there. S13 was interesting because we got into a big conversation around whether this is a legislative task force or group or not. And I guess there were 4 members who are members of the General Assembly on that, and then 2 who are not. And it came up to who's giving support for that committee. Is it AOE basically hiring the consultant, doing that work? Or is there going to be JFO doing it on behalf of the legislature? But the bill is kind of in between the two on what it is in terms of is it legislative in nature or is it more administrative in nature? And where's the support coming from on that? So I know that Chair Kitchell is going to speak to Senator Perslick about that further. And they want to get that resolved for tomorrow.
Yes.
And oh, sorry, one more thing on that. They also asked whether you had heard from AOE in the State Board of Education on that bill. And I can't recall. I don't think the State Board came in. I can't recall if the French
Agency of Ed, I know, was in at one point. But yes, I don't think we had a rep from the State Board in with that bill.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's a lot of work. So I think the question, I mean, Senator Kitchell said, well, it's really an implementation task force. That's usually done by the administration. So maybe it should be AOE.
Yeah.
You got 4 out of the 6 members being members of the General Assembly. So it's just kind of like, it's not quite clear what it is in terms of that question.
Do we
Andy,
have a preference? Is that what you were just going to ask, Chair?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. What was your question?
Do we have a preference?
Right. I mean, it seems to me that it would be, I know the agency testified that they were not equipped to take on a lot of work. But this seemed like it was in some ways a compromise where they would take on some of this while able to, again, send out an RFP to get a consultant in that I think would do really the bulk of the work. So that's sort of the way I was thinking about it, but that's just me. Senator Perchlik.
Yeah, the more I think about it, I think it is more of a legislative, because there are going to be policy decisions. It's not just implementing. There are some opportunities to move some levers in the way you implement it, and those will have impacts on policy or things that the legislature is going to have to vote on.
Yeah.
So, and given AOE's concern about capacity, even having them do an RFP and managing the contract to the consultant, maybe that's better that it's JFO, which makes it closer to the legislators. If asked, that's the way I would think of it, as more of a legislative, not as an administrative task force.
I mean, and that's fine with me. I think certainly given AOE's concerned about the workload, that would solve that. That's for sure. And I think your point's a good one. There are some real policy decisions in there. Any objections to that, anyone? Okay. And so I don't know, Mr. Desmarais, if you think APROPS will have to amend our work to get to clarify what Senator Perchlik pointed out.
It would have to, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
But Jim, do you think it needs to be amended either way because it wasn't clear?
I think either way you go, it should be amended, because it's not. I think that who actually does the RFP and the consultant isn't clear.
Okay.
So that needs to be clarified anyway.
Okay.
And they had some changes, small changes to the way the expression of choosing members on the task force or implementation group. They want written chair of the committees or designee, as opposed to how it's written now, which is a member of chosen by the chair. So small changes there as well.
Who drafted this for us?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm totally joking, because seriously.
I tell you though, it's the first bill I've drafted that has a majority of legislators on. So this is a new area for me too, actually.
Oh no, yeah, I just, please. I mean, oh my gosh, you're doing amazing work. Okay, so Senator Perchlik and Mr. Desmarais, you think you have what you need to talk to APROPS tomorrow, and I'll give the chair a call tonight, also just to touch base with her on this.
So are they going to let us know when to go to APROPS? I saw the email, but I didn't have it.
Yes, usually Chrissy will send a link. In general, I've been sending the reporters of the bill, but just let me know what you're comfortable with. I know Senators Hooker and Chinden were there, and I was there on literacy.
Yeah, I haven't been yet.
Yeah, Chrissy usually will send a link. Great. Jim, so anything else on that before we move to S1? So S100, it sounds like still a lively debate in APROPS around where the funds might come from. And that is where, of course, that conversation should be had. And then I sent Senators Starr and Pearson this morning the language that came from Mr. Fisher that you put into into that draft amendment for us, thinking that really is our jurisdiction. Were you in Ag this morning to talk about that language?
Yeah, it's been a long day.
I know, it seems like.
I can't recall where I've been today. I've been everywhere today. Let me see. I was in Senate Ag this morning, yes.
Great.
And there was a question raised around that language. I think the question, they wanted to hear from the agency to understand the language better.
Okay.
So it's really a question that the agency coming in and testifying, I think, on that language. There's a piece about breaking down the information by like student level, and they weren't sure what that meant. So I imagine it means by grade level, but then they were like, why? So the agency needs to explain their language, basically.
Right. You know if they're having them come in tomorrow?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, that sounds fine. You know, I left it with Senators Starr and Pearson. Come back to us, let us know the work that you need from us. And we also talked about whatever is decided. Hopefully both committees can be in agreement where we could do a joint floor amendment, knowing that you're going to get 11 people have seen, you know, any kind of amendment, and both groups would endorse it. Anybody have any questions or concerns about that or that approach? Okay. Jim, thanks a million.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Really appreciate it. Okay. Unless anybody has any other questions or concerns, Jeannie, would you take us off